consideration of
continuing
continuing the agreement with the state of
So then I have to
Nebraska
change my
Department of Roads.
motion. What my motion should be is we continue with the current, we should continue with the current.
I think it's on in a way that I think you could take action to continue with the agreement. That's what it really says on the agenda. Consideration.
Clear that up.
I will make a motion that we will, that we continue with the current agreement.
Second.
I think, is that right? I think that's right.
Point of order. When you guys, everybody's been discussing this topic for better than 30, 35 minutes now, it would have been appropriate to move what you want to move and then open the floor for discussion. Then all the discussion that everybody would have had for the last 35 minutes would have been part of the record. I know that it'll be end up in the minutes, but for the sake of everybody who is such a stickler for all the rules, when you make a motion and you second it and it comes up, then you have your discussion. We basically are doing it in backwards order.
Well, anytime you have a motion and a second, as soon as anybody calls for the question, then the vote comes up and you don't have any more discussion. Correct?
Generally speaking,
Okay.
you make them, you will move on a particular topic, and then discussion's open on the topic. Then a motion will be to close discussion and then take affirmative action on the other.
Okay. We have a motion by Gaston and a second by Hyatt to continue with the agreement. Roll call, please.
Hyatt.
Yes.
Gaston.
Yes.
Philsinger.
Yes.
Witherspoon.
Yes.
Van Vliet.
No.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for your input. It's a good discussion. Okay. We're going to move on to item 10, update on the proposed sales tax legislation, LB 967.
Just to update the council, I did provide you a memo also on a couple days last week I spent in Lincoln meeting with different legislative committees and trying to meet with each one of the revenue committee members, state senators, or their chief of staff if the senator was unavailable.
Pay the heat bill.
It's kind of, from what our original intent was on the bill, it's been altered with the atmosphere in Lincoln right now, with all the concerns over the available state funding and so forth. Our state senator, at the advice of the Appropriations Committee chairman, actually had proposed putting this 10% safety net that we proposed in revolving loan fund that would be a safety net refund fund, where if in a given year a municipality lost greater than 10% of its local sales tax revenue due to state incentives, it could borrow against this fund during years that had greater than 10% loss, and that would happen automatically. Once you reach that threshold, your loss would be over. And in future years or the year subsequent to that, if you fell below the 10%, it would automatically pay it back up to the 10%, providing that threshold. There have been very few communities that have been impacted like we have. But there is a growing concern, obviously, from the few examples that are out there. The problem with when the senator changed it, we went from 100% unanimous support from the league members, the legislative committees of the large and small cities, to a situation where they opposed it, because what they did is propose taking it right off the top of the municipal state aid that is shared by all communities that comes from general state resources. They are very protective of that. They don't want to give the impression that that's okay to do, because over time they continue to lose their revenues. So knowing that, and knowing the stand that the executive committee made right before I went to Lincoln to meet with all these groups, I was brainstorming with some other municipal leaders, trying to figure out a concept of what might be palatable for everybody to consider some support. And what we did is we came up with a one-time only, 1 month only, 1% fee on all sales tax collected across the state of Nebraska at the beginning of the next fiscal year, our October revenues, which are generated in August, and that 1% fee would generate this refund fund and stabilize it for some time in the future based on past analysis of how many people would qualify for reaching that threshold. It's a very simplistic way of doing it. It's not going to cost. Everybody kind of shares a little bit in the original intent. The state needs to be a partner in this because it's a state program that they've basically circumvented some local funds to provide at no discretion of the local jurisdictions. So whether they will buy off on this or not, it's probably our only way politically that we can get some support when the bill comes up for hearing. I put together some language for the senator to consider introducing an amendment. In my discussions with the individual revenue committee members, the state senators, I felt we had a legitimate chance of this going out of committee and getting onto the floor. But a lot of things happen in Lincoln, and the atmosphere down there is very tense. Everybody's trying to play defense because the state's in a fiscal crisis. And so whether this will sell in the end, I believe it's the only way that we have a chance. If they continue to go forward with the municipal state aid thing, obviously the league members are going to oppose that. It wouldn't bother us because they've already taken away most of our state aid because they penalize communities for being progressive, which we haven't. So knowing all the politics, the league legislative committees did support that concept. So they're already on record doing that if the senator introduces that amendment. And I have a teleconference call with the Nebraska Economic Developers Legislative Committee. They've taken at least a neutral stance on it, so they're not opposing it. And I'm hopeful we can convince them. I had a chance to meet with them. I think we had a lot of education go on, that they understand it a lot better now. And I think they have a vested interest because a lot of their funding comes from sales tax revenues as well. So they may, in fact, endorse it. And if we could get both of them endorse it and the Revenue Committee to accept the amendment if the senator introduces it, I think that's our legitimate shot this year of getting something done. If it gets onto the floor, it's a whole different debate. And then the governor always has a trump card. It's a very complicated thing to explain. It's like a moving target. There are some other amendments that may come forward, may not. There's another bill been introduced by South Sioux City's senator. I also met with him. We agreed to at least theoretically provide support for them because he provided co-sponsorship onto this bill. This really takes some of the controversy away from it because it really doesn't take anything away from anybody, and it provides this fund that's a safety net. And so the controversy becomes in how do you fund the fund initially. So that's kind of where it sits. They have scheduled a hearing for February 24th. It's a Wednesday at 1:30. It's the day after our next council meeting. I'll be leaving early that morning to go down to provide that testimony and working with some other people who will likewise do so, and see where we go from there. And report back. They may or may not vote that day. They're considering several other bills. You have to wait clear to the end of the day to find out if they truly will decide to advance or to let it set until some future time that they either vote on it or let it set indefinite or carry over to the next year. But I truly believe we have a legitimate chance that it may get out. We've got really good reception from the chairperson who holds a lot of clout with the Revenue Committee, Senator Cornett, that she has an understanding of it now. The Appropriations Committee chairman, even though he's not on the Revenue Committee chair, everybody listens to him and he carries a lot of clout. One of his communities has been severely impacted by this as well. So he has a vested interest in trying to help resolve the situation. By having that, we then would go into future budget years knowing exactly, worst case scenario, what we can plan for in our budgets as far as sales tax loss. So it would bring